Hi, I'm Tammy Fitchett, your Silicon Valley real estate reporter, and today we're going to talk about the age-old dilemma that generally affects first-time home buyers, and sometimes it also extends to existing homeowners. And that dilemma is, where should you buy a home? Should you buy in the city or should you buy in the suburbs? We both know living in the city does provide its benefits. There are many reports out today that suggest millennials are choosing to live in the city rather than the suburbs. We know there's easy access to bars, restaurants, and you have the exciting city nightlife, as opposed to living in the suburbs where you may live further out, you may live in a bigger single family home, and you have access to Target, your local Starbucks, you have Trader Joe's, and you have our beloved Costco. So with this in mind, we're going to consider reasons to move to the city and reasons to move to the suburbs. And hopefully, after what we consider today, this will help you make a decision of what's right for you. So the first thing, the topic we're going to go over is you need to focus on being close to what you need. What's important to you? If you don't have any kids and schools are not a factor, you may want to live in the city. That way you don't have much of a commute. However, on the opposite end of that, if you do have a family or you're a couple expecting to plan a family in the near future, you may want to consider living in the suburbs where you do have more rooms. You generally have newer schools and easier access to the family, quote unquote, family, things like a park, more open space than you would in the city. Then this leads into the next topic, schools. What's important to you? You can live in the city, and we know, there are reports out according to the Hetchinger report that it quotes, "It should come as no surprise that urban districts tend to have a lower graduation rate than the suburban ones." So with this in mind, you may want to end up moving to the suburbs instead of living in the city, where you'll probably choose to, and there are very good public schools in the city, but just exercising all your options, you may want to get a private school, as opposed to moving to the suburbs where you may have newer school, and along with that, you may have higher taxes to facilitate those newer schools. So these are one of the things you want to keep in mind, when you are considering whether to live in the city or in the suburbs. The next point we're going to go over is living space. What's important to you? And this kind of goes back to whether you are just a couple, a single individual by yourself, or a family. Basically, what are your personal needs? As we know, generally, if you live in the city, things get smaller. It's much easier to live in the suburbs and have a bigger space than live in the city that's already established and have what you call infill, where they're building new homes in the city. They're not going to be as big and have as many options to be bigger at a reasonable price as you would in the suburbs. So this is another factor that you want to keep in mind. Then this leads to jobs. We want to consider, where are you going to live in relation to your job? What's important to you? Is having a faster commute time important to you, and the sacrifices that come along with having a faster commute time? You may have a higher home price living in the city as opposed to living in the suburbs, where you may commute up to an hour. And as in the Silicon Valley area, we all know that sometimes, our commute can be up to an hour to an hour and a half, depending on where you live, just to go and drive to the city. And I am one of those who do the same thing. I live in the suburbs and I commute up to an hour each way so I can come to work in the city. However, that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make to have a bigger area to live in. And then the next thing we're going to look at is outdoor space. What's important to you? In some urban areas, parks give residents a respite from all the high rises. However, living in the city means that you have to have a trade-off. And you don't have an ample access to nature. You don't have the bigger parks. You don't have the bigger things that you can go to as you would in the suburbs. And then the next thing we're going to consider is safety. And this is a touchy subject. However, this is just something to be mindful of. As we know, sometimes living in the city, you can have a higher crime rate. According to Forbes.com, you can go there and they can help you find what or identify a neighborhood that's about to take a turn for the better, or identify a neighborhood that is more advantageous for you. In addition to that, the last thing we're going to talk about is what's important to you. Is it the age of the property? You're going to have an older home, generally, if you're living in the city, as opposed to the suburbs. And we know sometimes with older homes, there are more issues. And as opposed to living in the suburbs where you have a newer home and you have the opportunity to not have a lot of issues. And this is not saying that living in the city, you're going to have issues. No, I'm not saying that. These are just things I want you to consider and think about when you're trying to choose where is the best place for you to live, the city or the suburbs. So this is it for now. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. My link is in the bottom in the box. You can do me a favor. You can feel free to call, email, text. Just if you do any of the above, especially with email, with text and call, let me know who you are. Introduce yourself so that I have an idea of where, of where you got my number and all that fun stuff. Otherwise, have a great day, and I will look forward to talking to you in our next video.